Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears here, and in today's video I'm going to be making a card using the Stamps of Life Fold It Club Kit for July of 2023. And this month's club kit features a sea turtle. You can use this die set to make a shaped card, or you can add it to the front of a card base or a scrapbook page. So here's a look at the dies. You get the large sea turtle. It does make an A2 sized shape card. There's also a die for some layering pieces for the shell of the turtle, as well as some dies if you wanted to put some spots on its legs. So as I said earlier, you can use this die set to make a card shaped like a turtle, as you see here on the front of the packaging, or you can put the dies together to put on a card front. You also get a pack of 2 stencils. So one of the stencils has 3 different patterns that you can use for the shell. So you can see there's one at the top left with some swirls. You can also stencil on some hexagon shapes and also some lines on the shell of the turtle, and there's also a stencil there for the spots. The second stencil will allow you to make a background for a card base. So it will give you some ocean background. You can see there's some waves at the top and bottom, which would represent the ocean. There's also some lines all throughout the stencil that you can use to represent the water. So those are the items that you would get with the Fold It Club set for July of 2023. And if you're interested in joining the club, I will have a link in the description box of this YouTube video down below where you can click on to join the club, or if you just want to get more information about the club. And if you do use my link, you will get 500 bonus club points to spend in the Stamps of Life store. And I always appreciate when you use my links because it does help support me. So let's go ahead and make a card. I'm going to start out with the sea turtle. So I took this die and die cut a piece of the mint chip cardstock. And then I took the layering die for the shell. And I die cut that out of the Gingersnap cardstock. And when you die cut that, you get what you see here. So 2 of the hexagon pieces will cut out. So if you wanted to die cut it in a different color and add 2 hexagons there in a different color, you can do that. But mine is going to be all in the Gingersnap cardstock, because then I'm going to use the layering stencil right over top of this die cut piece. You can see that if I just put my cardstock right underneath the stencil, it will line up perfectly. Now you could always take the other 2 stencils and you can just put those stencils over the back of the turtle on the green die cut piece that I initially had on the screen, and you can stencil on a nice design. But I'm going to go ahead and use this hexagon shaped design, and I'm just lining up my cardstock with the stencil. I flipped the stencil over and I'm just adding some mint tape to secure the cardstock to the back of the stencil so that it stays in place. Next, I'm going to use my Stamps of Life inks. I'm going to start out with the chocolate ink, and I'm going to put some of this chocolate ink, this is just a dark brown ink, just right around the edge of all of these sections of the hexagons. And I'm using a very small ink blending brush. I didn't want to use a very large ink blending brush because I only wanted to get the ink around the edges. So the ink blending brush I'm using, it just fits on the tip of my finger, and I have a lot of control over where the ink goes. Next, I'm coming in with the Artichoke ink, and I'm going to add some of the Artichoke ink towards the middle of each one of those hexagon shapes. Once all of the ink is applied, I'm removing that cardstock from the stencil. And you can see that just by adding that ink, it adds for such depth to that piece. Now I also want to do the same thing with these 2 cutout pieces. I want to add the same color inks. I'm going to put a little circle of the artichoke ink right on the middle of each one of those die cut pieces, and then I'm going to come in with the chocolate ink and just go right along all of the edges of each of those pieces. And lastly, I'll come in again with the artichoke ink and just smooth out that circle so it doesn't look like such a defined circle. I want to actually just smooth out those edges. So I'll set those pieces aside, and now I'm going to add some of the spots for the legs of the sea turtle. So I just put the stencil over the legs, and I'm just going to add some of the chocolate ink to those hole openings on the stencil. I'm going to do the same thing there for the front set of legs. So this is the die cut piece that I was referring to. If you wanted to use those other two stencils for the design on the shell of the sea turtle, you can just place those stencil designs right on top of this green piece and stencil those on. Okay, so I decided that I didn't want to have the dots on the legs be just so flat just by having them stenciled on. I wanted to actually have some dimension and have them raised a little bit. So I took this die that you see here on my table and I die cut some more of the Gingersnap cardstock, and it gave me all these little die cut pieces for the spots, and I am just going over them with my ink blending tool and some inks to add some color, just like I did with the die cut piece for the shell. So I'm adding some of the artichoke ink and the chocolate ink to these pieces. And once I'm done inking them up, I'm going to set them aside and I'm going to put some of my sea turtle together, and in a little bit I'll add these right over those stenciled areas of my sea turtle where I initially added those dots. So before I add them, I do want to take some ink and just add some more ink to the edge of my sea turtle. I think this is going to add some more definition to it and more depth, more color. So I'm using the same color ink that I've been using all along. This is the artichoke ink, and I'm just adding it to the edges. So here is a piece of the legs that actually has a cut in the cardstock, and I'm just sticking a piece of printer paper inside of this cut, and I'm inking up the edges that way. And I can do the same with the bottom of the shell by just adding this printer paper through these cuts in the cardstock so I can be sure that I have some ink along both of those edges. So you can see just by looking at my inked up sea turtle that adding that ink, it just adds such nice depth. I love inking up the edges, whether it be the sea turtle or whether it be flowers or any type of die cuts. If you've been following me for a while, you know that this is something that I do regularly just to add more interest to the die cut pieces. So here I'm going to add the printer paper right inside of the mouth so I can get some ink on the bottom of the mouth. Okay, so after inking up the sea turtle, I'm going to go ahead and just spray my magnetic mat with some water and clean all that ink up so that it doesn't accidentally transfer to any other cardstock. So now I'll go ahead and glue the brown shell onto the green sea turtle, and then I'll also glue in those missing pieces. And then I'll go ahead and add all of those die cut spots for the legs that I previously die cut and inked up. So you can see I'm just adding a touch of glue on the already stenciled spot on its leg, and I'm going to add those die cut pieces. So again, it's really your preference if you want to just add the stencil design or if you want to add the die cuts. I wanted to do the die cuts because I just felt that extra piece of cardstock and the additional ink with the multicolored ink, the green and the brown ink. It just adds some more dimension and texture to my sea turtle. So here I'm going to add some more spots to the front leg and just adding some glue to the leg and then picking up those spots and adding them onto the sea turtle. I'm also going to add one to the eye, so I will die cut just one solid piece of dark brown cardstock and I'll add that to the eye on the sea turtle. So if you wanted to make this into a shaped card, all you would do is take a piece of cardstock, fold it in half, and then take this largest shadow die and place the die so that the shell is at the top or above the fold in the cardstock, and then run that through your die cutting machine. That'll give you your card base, okay, and you can put your turtle on top of that, but before you do, I want you to notice that there's a little bit of white missing at the top of the shell where that white cardstock was folded. So to fix this, simply take the same die cut a piece of white cardstock, just a single piece, don't fold it, and then see there's where you can see that some of the white's missing. So you would just take your turtle that you've already have all nice and decorated and put that on top of the solid piece of white, and then put that on top of your card base. And now you have that white edge all around. So that's how you would make a shaped card, but I'm not making a shaped card. Instead, I'm going to make a slimline card. So I have a piece of Blue Jay cardstock that I cut to 8 1/4 by 3 1/4, and I'm going to use the stencil that came in this folded club kit, and I'm going to use the top edge of that stencil where the wave shape is, and I'm just adding some ocean ink just right along the top edge. Okay, I did put some mint tape on the side just so that I didn't get any ink off to the right side of that stencil, although you don't need to do that as long as you're careful not to get ink on the edge of that stencil. So I'm going to, once I do the first line, I'm going to turn that stencil over because I get a different type of wave, and I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm taking my mini ink blending tool and I'm putting it right over the tip of that stencil just to get a little bit of ink. I'm not inking up the entire piece of cardstock above the stencil, just a little bit above the edge. And then once I get the left side of the cardstock inked up with the wave pattern, I'm just moving that stencil over to the right side of the cardstock and finishing off that wave off to the right. So that's how you can make a stenciled pattern on a longer piece of cardstock that's longer than the actual stencil. So for each line, I'm repeating the process and I'm turning the stencil over and I'm rotating between the wave on the top of the stencil and the wave on the bottom of the stencil, just so that the wave is not the same exact pattern all the way through. It just gives me some different wave lines with each time I stencil a wave across that cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to finish it up here, and then I'm going to take a white gel pen and I'm just going to put some dots along the peaks of the waves just for some extra interest. So maybe like 3 to 5 dots using the white gel pen just all throughout that stenciled background. And here's a closer look at what that looks like. I think you can also use the stencil to represent clouds to get more use out of that stencil. Okay, so now I'm going to take that entire background piece and I'm going to stamp a very large sentiment. I'm using a stamp set from Scrapbookcom. This is the Happy Birthday stamp set. And I'm going to place my stamp in the right corner or the right side of my cardstock. And this is an outline stamp. And what I love about this stamp is that when I stamp it down, it's just going to have an outline around all of those letters. And you're still going to be able to see that wave pattern through the letters because it's not going to be solid black. I will need to ink this up another time just to get a better impression. And I'm using my Versafine Onyx black ink to add ink to that stamp. Okay, next I'm going to add some ink to some greenery that I die cut with some artichoke cardstock, and I'm adding the artichoke ink just to add some more depth to it. The greenery that I'm using here is from Scrapbookcom. It's the Delicate Leaves die set, and by the way, I will have links to all of the additional supplies that I use in this video. They'll be down in the description box below. I'm also going to pull out my Sand Dollar Folded die set. This is the die set from the June Folded Club kit. I'm going to use the shell that's included in that Sand Dollar Folded die set. And I die cut some shells in different pink color cardstock. And there's also a small sand dollar die in that Fold It Club kit from last month, and I die cut that out of some, this is the Cantaloupe cardstock. So I have the Cantaloupe cardstock. I've also used the cherry cardstock, Bubblegum, and Guava. And here I'm just taking some ink. This is some cherry ink, and I'm adding it to the edges of the seashells. I'm going to do all of them, and then I'm also going to come in with the Marigold ink, and I'm going to ink up the edge of the sand dollars. Now I'm ready to go ahead and add my sea turtle and all of the other die cut pieces to my card. I haven't glued down the turtle yet. Instead, I just placed it there because I'm adding some of the greenery behind it. So I added this first piece behind the shell of the turtle, and I'm going to add the seashells. One is going to be behind the sea turtle and the other two will be in front. So I want to make sure that I glue down the pieces that are in back first, and then I can add the sea turtle, and then I can add the other pieces that are on top of the sea turtle. I'm also going to add one of the pieces of greenery in front of the sea turtle but behind the seashells, so I want to get that in place. Put another one behind its head, and I'm going to cut the top part off of it because I will put one behind its head, and then I'm going to take the top part and make it so that it's coming out the top of the back of the sea turtle head, and I'll glue those pieces down. Then I'll go ahead and glue the pink shell that's behind the sea turtle. Tuck that in the back. I'll go ahead and add the piece of greenery that's on the sea turtle shell. And then I'll add the sea turtle to the card. And then I'll finish up by gluing the remainder of the seashells as well as the sand dollars to the card. Next, I'm going to use a piece of the Scrapbookcom mixed metals glitter paper. This paper is slimline in size, so it will fit perfectly on a slimline sized card, and I chose to use this color that kind of matches the color in the shell of the turtle. But I don't want to use all of it. I want to actually save the middle. It's going to be covered up by that large card layer anyway, so I'm just using a craft knife to cut out the inside, and I'll save that for another project. All I need is the outside edge, so I'm going to go ahead and add that glitter paper to a slimline size card base. My card base measures 8.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And then I'll add the card layer right to the top of that card base. Next, I'm going to take out my white gel pen and I'm going to add a little white gel pen mark there in its eye. I got that tip from Cheryl, so thank you, Cheryl, for that. I've never thought to add that white accent mark in the eye before, but I definitely think that it does add that extra special touch. And I'm also going to add some white gel marks there on the shells just to add some more highlights. And lastly, I'll add some to the leaves, and that's going to finish my card for today. So if you're interested in any of the products I've used today, be sure to check the links in the description of this YouTube video. And if you're interested in joining the Fold It Club, there will be a link for that as well. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like videos like this, be sure to click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications so that you'll be notified when I release new videos. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.